Hey guys, I have something completely different for you today. This is something that I have from the start of my channel planned to do, and was just kind of waiting for what seemed like the right time, I guess. But just recently I had a subscriber ask me specifically if I was going to share my testimony. And since that is something that I always knew I was going to do, I thought, you know what, that's just my little kind of nudge from God saying this is the right time. So I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about who I am, where I've come from. Kind of like, obviously, you know, I'm a Christian. If you've watched my channel for a while, you'll know that from different things that I say, or my book reviews, things that bother me about books or things like that. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know already that I'm a Christian, but I haven't always been, and I wanted to share with you guys kind of what got me to where I am today. For people who've only known me since I've been a Christian, which I did not come to Christ until I was almost 30 years old. I was like 28 or 29. I could give you the exact date, but my brain's just whatever. But I grew up in a home where we went to church every week. My dad grew up Catholic. My mom did not, but when she got married, she started taking us to Catholic church. So I grew up going to church, going to catechism, being in the church. But I never felt any kind of connection. It was something I dreaded on Sunday mornings, made excuses to try not to have to go. All through high school, I'd have little sparks of things where like I enjoyed stuff that like my, youth group thing was doing, but it was I never felt any kind of connection. I just felt like I was doing these things because I was supposed to. And I questioned a lot of things as well, which is normal and fine. And you should always be questioning, but nothing ever felt right or real to me. So fast forward to my husband and I have been friends since we were 6 years old. So we grew up together. He was brought up in a Christian home, completely the opposite. His family was Pentecostal. So if you know anything about those specific denominations, Catholic from Pentecostal, they're about as far apart as you can get. And he never really felt a connection on his end either. Growing up, he felt the same way. Like, it was like he had to do it. It wasn't something that was ever his. He had questions about things that went on. And so when we were 19, we began like dating seriously, because we had dated a little bit during high school and stuff, and we're best friends. We hung out all the time. So we started dating and things like that, and we had our first son a few months before we got married. And our wedding was already planned before, or we were already engaged before I ended up being pregnant a few months later and that kind of thing. So not the ideal situation, but that's the reality. So my son Gavin was born February 25th of 1999, and we got married on June 12th of 1999. And we were young. I had just turned 21 right before we got married. My husband turned 21 a month later, and we were kids, and we had a kid. And that already starts you out. It's rough. It's hard. We thought we could handle it, and we did, but it was a lot harder than we even thought it would be. And through the years, once I had him and got into that, I sort of felt, which not consciously, but looking back, it was like I never had my years, kind of, for being young and just enjoying life. I went right from school basically into being a mom, it felt like. I did get my associate's degree from college. I went to the community college and did that before I actually finished up while I was still pregnant with him. And so things like that I was able to accomplish before he was born, but it was hard. My husband was working a lot. We were both working, and he was still going to school, and it was just a really rough time. And fast forward to me getting pregnant again, and we planned it. It wasn't like it was unplanned, but so my second son was born 3 years later, and I was just slowly falling apart over those years, not quite realizing it. But after my second son was born, I had postpartum depression really bad, and I didn't know necessarily what was happening with me. I didn't understand it. I kind of just hit it. I remember I would get in the shower and I would just sob. Like my whole body would just be racked with sobbing because I was just I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't understand it. And once I kind of started coming out of that, I still just had this weird sense of like who I was, what I was doing, like, I don't know. And I kind of just started to spiral out of control. Now, I was not a kid, like a lot of kids when I was growing up and while we were in high school were drinkers and partiers. I was not that kid. When like my senior year was the first time I tasted alcohol, and then that was a really bad thing for me. I come from a family, both sides of my family have alcoholism in them. And people try to act like they don't, and it's rough because they enable each other because that's easier than confronting the issue. And so it was very easy for me to fall into alcoholism because there was nobody telling me that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. I was just part of the group now. And it got really ugly. I became an alcoholic. I was drinking at home with my little boys, and during the day while my husband was at work, I would get plastered. And it started out with just beer. I wouldn't drink any kind of liquor, but if there was beer in the house, I was drinking it. Well, then it progressed, and I would be falling down, pass out drunk with 2 little boys at home. And my marriage was suffering. He actually had an alcohol issue as well, and we were falling apart. I mean, we grew up being best friends and having so much fun together and enjoying being with each other, and it turned into we were fighting over who had to stay sober to watch the kids when we would, go to different functions or go camping or whatever. That's so disgusting. That's nothing that any kids, and they were young, so they didn't know, but still, like, for parents to argue over who has to stay sober to watch their kids, it just makes me feel sick to think about it. I was a mess. I was promiscuous. I wanted people to look at me. I needed that, attention and that, affirmation of some sort or something. Like, I wanted to know that people thought I was attractive. So I was, the way I dressed, was promiscuous. I'm, wearing shirts that are way down and, I was so in need of something, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to fix it, and it was just getting worse and worse, and our marriage was having issues, and it was just out of control. Then, and we had decided, I think we're just going to have the 2 kids. Well, then, I ended up one night saying to my husband, I think I want one more. And he was like, I'm glad you said that because so do I. And, now kind of thinking about where we were, what the heck were we thinking? Because we were not in a good place to bring another child into our family. But for whatever reason, we both wanted to have another one. So here comes our third son, Asher. So we have Gavin, Riley, and Asher. They're all 3 years apart. And I don't know what I was thinking because I was not mom material. I was a sorry excuse for a mom. I was still getting drunk all the time. I didn't drink while I was pregnant. So I was able to sort of shut it off and be super careful that way. And while I was breastfeeding and that kind of stuff, no. But then it just started toward the end of even breastfeeding with him. It was getting real bad. And I was just falling right back into that spiral of being drunk all the time. That was how I dealt with whatever it was that I had going on that I couldn't figure out how to deal with. yeah, super flirty, going out to bars with my friends, being in places I should not have been as a married woman, and, you know, dancing on people, and just should not have been. And I think now, because I don't remember all the people. Because I would be so drunk that I would pass out. And, I live half an hour from that town where I lived during that time. And I know full well that there are people who see me that from during that time that I honestly don't remember. There are certain people that I remember being at places, not necessarily interacting with, but I'm like, I know there are people who remember me and are probably like, oh, there's that girl. I actually heard someone one day. I worked in the mall, and I was walking to go get lunch in the food court, and this guy and girl passed me, and this guy's like, that girl's a total skank. And I acted like oh, he must not have been talking about me, because I didn't remember him. But that's the problem. And so I know there's probably people who still see me and still think of me that way, and that's okay, because that was me. That's not me now. So, fast forward. My husband and I had decided, actually right before I got pregnant with Asher, we were like, we were brought up in church. I knew inside me, I knew God was real, and I knew that I needed to get connected with him somehow. And my husband felt the same way. And so we had gone to church and everything. And I remember there was this couple, we had been trying to get pregnant, and I had a chemical pregnancy, which is basically, it's kind of like a miscarriage, except for, so the egg gets fertilized, but it never attaches. But so you are showing up that you're pregnant in pregnancy tests, and then, like with a miscarriage, how then you just start bleeding. And so I had told everyone I was pregnant and everything, and I was babysitting for people across the street one day, and I just started bleeding, and she was pregnant and didn't even want to be, or not didn't want to be, but it was unexpected for her. And it was like, I remember just being so devastated. And so we had started going to this church, and I remember like we'd only gone a couple times, and we were there the one day, and there was a couple that sang a song, and it was something about like your children. And I remember just losing it, because I was like, I want a baby, and why can't I have a baby? Like, God won't give me a baby, and which I was in no position to be a mom at that point, unfortunately. And it was very quickly after that I ended up pregnant then again, and pregnant with Asher. And we stopped going to church, because look I got what I wanted. And not that that was really what I was thinking, like, oh, I went to church and cried to God and he gave me a baby, so now I'm good, I got what I wanted. It wasn't like that, but it might as well have been, because we stopped going. So we're back in that cycle of me drinking all the time, us arguing. It's so funny, because people who didn't know us before are like, what? Because we're like the couple that I think annoys everyone, because we do everything together. And I know people are like, seriously, can they not do anything on their own? But that's just, we are best friends. We are like so connected. And so the way we were, it was just such a mess. And so times were bad, not good at all. Asher was 15 months old, and the boys all had the flu, and I was home with them. It was during the day, and thank you God that I was not drinking that day. I guess because my kids were sick, I had enough sense not to get drunk. He had eaten some yogurt, and he had it all over his face, and it was like in his hair, as babies do. And I was like, you know what, he needs a bath. So I thought to myself, I'm going to give him like a tepid bath though, because he's had a fever. Like the boys they had all been sick. And so I'm like, I don't want to put him in hot water, but just put him in kind of a tepid bath, kind of help bring his fever down and get him cleaned up. Well, the strangest thing, I cannot explain this to you. And this is just a little thing of how I know how God works. But at the time, I don't know what in the world. I put him in, and I had like this, he didn't fill the bath very high, and I had like this netted thing that he would lay on. And I remember laying him on there and looking at him and thinking to myself, and this is going to sound crazy because I don't blame you if you think it does, because I know it does. I thought to myself, please don't have a seizure. The only reason I think I thought that is because a couple weeks prior, a friend of mine, her son had had a febrile seizure, which basically happens because your temperature rises too fast. It happens in children. And so I knew this had happened. She had told me all about it and how scary it was, but that it's fairly common, and she had told me all about it. So as I'm laying him in there and looking at him, I think that to myself, please don't have a seizure. And what does he do? Stiffen right up and just start like this shake. It was the most terrifying thing to see. Oh my gosh. And I know, oh my goodness, I'm going to cry because this is really crazy, you guys. The person who asked me if I was going to give my testimony is my second cousin Debbie from Kansas, who you've probably now heard several times because she sent me a beautiful package, but her son has epilepsy, and I did not even think about that connection. Like, that is, whew, God is amazing. Oh my gosh, if you don't know him and love him, oh my goodness. Anyway, so wow, that is crazy. I didn't even think about that before, but so Asher started seizing. Well, I go into this like mom mode. I know what this is. My friend just had this happen to her son. We've got this. So I get him out, wrap him in a blanket thing that had been laying there. It wasn't even a towel. And I call 911. I'm yelling to the boys, bring me the phone. And my oldest was only, 6 at the time? And 7. I guess he was about 7. And so he brings me the phone, and I call 911. And the 911 operator, I'm telling her what's happening, whatever. And she's like, you're being very calm. I said, well, my friend's son just had this happen, so I know it, happens and whatever. And she's like, you're right, kind of talking me through the thing. So I'm like, okay, we got this, right? So I turn him on his side because he's drooling like crazy and just, I'm just talking to him and rubbing his back, and he's laying on the floor in this blanket. The other boys are so terrified. That was the hardest part at that particular moment, trying to keep them calm. So we lived kind of right around the corner from a fire hall. So I'm waiting to hear, because I know the fire trucks always get there before the ambulance does. And so I'm waiting to hear the siren, and the lady's talking to me, and it felt like an eternity. And finally I hear it start up, and so I'm telling the boys, it's okay, here, they're coming to get him, whatever. They're coming to help him. And so they get there, and the ambulance comes right behind them, and the paramedics come in, and they're like, whoa, it's a little one. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Which now I realize they seemed kind of unprepared for what they were coming into, which I thought was strange. But so they came in, and they're asking me questions about how it happened, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, we're going to take him out to the ambulance and, get him taken care of out there. I'm like, okay, So they go out. So they're like, in the meantime, you need to call someone, like your husband. So one of the paramedics is with me while I call. Actually, I don't remember if I called or he called for me. But standing right there anyway. And then, talking about what I can do with... I'm just thinking, okay, my husband, he needs to get home because I just don't want to be alone now after this happened, and once they bring him back in and everything and have him all settled. Well, they have him out there for I don't even know how long before they come back in and say, ma'am, we're taking him to the hospital. So, as soon as you can get there, whatever. Well, now I am panicked. And now, my husband has called his mom and my mom, and both of our parents lived about 30 minutes from us at the time, and just to get someone there so that I can leave. Well, I had this sweet neighbor that lived across the street. She was an older woman, and I started to walk out, and she came flying over to meet me, and, honey, what do you need? Do you need me to stay with your boys until, And so she was so sweet and stayed with the boys until I think my youngest sister got there first, and so I could go to the hospital and have my husband meet me there. So still at this point, I'm going, okay, they just took him because they want to check everything over, and, that's good. This is a good thing. It's not, don't freak out. I'm talking myself down. So I get to the hospital, and a woman who was someone who would come alongside you and just kind of comfort you and whatever during the time that's going on. I'm not exactly sure what they call them, but she was wonderful. she said to me, oh, you have the little boy that came in. And I said, yes. And she said, oh, okay, you want to see him? And I was like, yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, good. I'm going to go see, he's going to be so excited to see me, and everything. So we start walking back, and they rip a curtain across, and they're like, no, she cannot come in here. And I'm like, what? So now I'm panicked because why can't I come in? Why can't I see him, And so this woman sits me down. She takes me over. She sits me down. She's trying, talking to me, keep me calm. And she said, honey, do you have a church family that you would like me to call to pray for you, or someone who can come and sit with you? And I remember feeling so like, oh my goodness, people have a church family that will come alongside them if something like this happens. I remember just thinking like, no, I don't, And so it seemed like an eternity before then. Like my husband got there and my mom got there too. And because I believe his mom went over with my youngest sister to the house with our other boys. And when they came out, they told us, we are transferring him to St. John's, which is down by Detroit. And, you're going to have to go there, that kind of thing. Someone can ride in the ambulance with him. Like, we don't know what's going on. They basically told us that he seized for 15 minutes. Okay, febrile seizures, they don't typically last more than like 5 minutes, they told us. So after 15 minutes, and they couldn't bring him out of it with the normal like medication type thing that they do or whatever, they ended up giving him something to paralyze him so he would stop seizing. Now, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about this stuff. But that sounds pretty terrifying to me. So they had to intubate him for him to be able to breathe, because now he's paralyzed, so he can't breathe on his own. And I told my husband, I'm like, I cannot ride in the ambulance. Like, I cannot see him like that. So he was like, I'll ride in the ambulance, whatever. So my mom and I were going back to the house to let me, say goodbye to the boys, grab up some things of Asher's to be able to have. Because I'm like, oh, he's going to want toys, and he's going to want... They did not have diapers at this hospital to fit him. All they had was like newborn ones, because they didn't have a pediatric unit. They, didn't have anything to put on him. He came out of the bathtub. He was wrapped in a blanket. That was all he had. So I'm like, we've got to get him clothes and diapers and toys and, whatever. So my mom and I ran home. My dad met up with, my dad was somewhere else and started heading to the other hospital where they were transferring him. I'm so thankful I didn't ride in the ambulance, because the tube came out, and I guess he turned blue. My husband, they're scrambling to get him reintubated. And then it happened again once they got to the hospital. And then my dad met my husband there, so that was good. And then my mom and I ended up coming. They took us into a room, my husband and I. They couldn't tell us anything. They couldn't tell us if he was going to come out of it. He might not. He might die. He might be brain dead or have brain damage, or they could not tell us anything. We were left with, nothing. They could not tell us anything. That is the most terrifying thing as a parent, to know like something's going on with your child and there's nothing you can do. That feeling of utter helplessness is the most terrifying feeling ever. And he ended up, they got him into a room. They had him sedated so heavily so that he wasn't seizing anymore, but they just had him very heavily sedated and intubated, and just kind of watching with monitors and stuff what was going on with, I guess, brain activity and all the other stuff. And it was really such a, I don't know, I feel so much for people who go through things with their children, because if you haven't, you don't know how blessed you are. it's just something I feel like no parent should ever have to endure. But that leads me on to the rest of the story. He did end up obviously coming out of it. He was getting strong and he was fighting the tube. So they said, okay, you know, we're going to take the tubes out. He's fighting it, so he must be strong enough to breathe on his own. And so they had us. Now this is the day after it happened. So this is like the evening of the day after it happened. And it happened like in the afternoon of the day before. And so they had us leave the room because they're like, you don't want to be here when it's not a, you know, enjoyable thing. And so they got the tube out. Still couldn't tell us though, like if he had brain damage or anything, you know, we didn't know yet. And he had this, there's a song that my mom used to sing to us when we were kids. And it was about that I went to the animal fair, the birds and the beasts were there. And it was a little song that we would sing. And at the end, it would say, what became of the monk, about a monkey. And he would, when he was little, he couldn't sing it yet. At the end, he would go, along with the monk. And so the first thing I did when they let me hold him was sing it to him, and he did that. And so I was like, he's good, you know, like he knows. And that was like such a beautiful moment for me. It's such a goofy little song, but that was how I knew, like he knew exactly what was going on. And so they had him so pumped full of fluids that he, you know, was swollen up and whatever. And he ended up peeing just all over me. And so I didn't want to let him go, you know, I'm holding him for a while, but they were like, okay, ma'am, you know, let's get him cleaned up and everything. And why don't you go take a shower? They had a really nice family lounge where family could go. And so people who were visiting had a comfortable place to be. And there was, you know, special bathrooms and stuff in there that had a shower and things like that. And so my husband, you know, was staying in with him. And I went in to take the shower, and I had been like just kind of, you know, I don't know, it was weird. It was like almost like I couldn't, like I was feeling, but I couldn't express what I was feeling, kind of thing. It was the strangest thing. You can't explain when you're going through something like that, or like grief, or just like that fear, like why you do the things you do. Who knows? Like it's like something else takes over. And so I went in to take the shower, and as soon as the water hit me, it was like the tears came with the water, and I was in there just crying. And I said out loud, there were other people like out in the lounge area that could totally hear me, because it wasn't like, it reminds me of like a dorm room with a shared, you know, like bathroom where people can hear you if they're sitting. So it wasn't like it was super private or anything. And I said out loud, I said, God, I hear you loud and clear, and whatever you want from me from here on out, I'm yours. And I said, I don't want you to take my baby. Or I said, if you need to take my baby, this is weird too, like why did I say this? But I said, if you need to take my baby, I understand, but please don't. And it was just like something in me clicked. It's hard to explain. But I ended up, once I got back to the room, I was in there for a while, and a nurse had come in, and she was from India, and she said to me, she said, I probably shouldn't say this, but I just feel like I need to tell you. And she said, I'm a born again Christian, and I just know your baby's going to be just fine. And I remember being like, oh, what a weird thing for her to say. But now, when I was able to look back over that whole thing happening, how God orchestrated all those different people along the line of that experience, letting me know, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Like, and sometimes, unfortunately, God has to smack us upside the head to wake us up and make us recognize that He's here. Why are we doing this by ourselves? Why are we struggling so hard? Why, when we feel like something's missing, are we trying to fill it with alcohol, attention from people? Just, there's so many different things that people use, drugs, food. There's a million different things. People overly exercise. It's like you're looking for something to fill this void that you have, and you don't know what it is. And it's Him. And I can say that with absolute confidence because I know what He's done in my life. And not just mine. But it wasn't long after that we started going to church. It's the church that we continue to go to this day. When we moved back out to the country where we grew up, it's half an hour away from us. And people were like, "You're still going to drive all the way out there for church?" And I'm like, that is my church family. I had the best friends there. People who I know would drop everything in a heartbeat to be there if I need them. And I would do the same for them. And the love and the compassion and the coming alongside, celebrating with you when things are good and crying with you when things aren't, and being an encouragement to you. These people are my family. And that is the best thing. And oh man, when I was going through that and that woman asked me if I had a church family, now when I think about that, oh, what that must be like to have people come alongside you like that. That's what God gives us each other for, like to be that encouragement and that shoulder to lean on and cry on and to cry with you. And that's what He wants. He gives us each other for those things so we can be there for each other. And it didn't happen overnight, the drinking. It did not. The dressing different, I think, definitely started changing pretty quickly because I didn't feel like I wanted people's attention anymore. I didn't need that. I don't know. I felt a different worth about myself. I didn't look for people's approval or, affirmation from them in that way. That was gone. That was not filling the void, and it never would. The alcohol, I slowly kind of weaned off, but in November I'll celebrate 10 years of being absolutely alcohol free, not a single drop in 10 years once November hits. November 10th, I believe it is, 9th or 10th. I should know, but whatever, 9th or 10th, doesn't matter. And life over these past 10 years has been incredible. Asher is 12 and a half. He is healthy. He is happy. And in fact, his name is from the Bible. We didn't necessarily name him that from the Bible because at the time we weren't really Christians. But his name, he was one of Jacob's sons, and his name means happy. And he is a happy kid. Anybody who knows, he is so wise, and things that he says are just amazing. And his boldness to share Jesus with people, I totally, I'm in awe of, because he's not afraid. He's not afraid for people to make fun of him. He knows, and it's just so awesome to see. So I see how God uses him now, how He used him in our lives to wake us up, and just how He uses him along the line in other ways that are just so cool. And it's ways that I think of, if he wasn't here, what would life be like? How much people would be missing out on by him not being here, because he's just an awesome kid. And so my life just was transformed that night, standing in that shower, saying it out loud to God. Whatever you want from me, I'm yours. This is it. I'm done with the way I've been trying to do things. And I'll never go back to drinking ever again. There's nothing it offers to me or anyone that is worth the negative things that can happen. I never have to wake up feeling sick and disgusting. I never have to wake up wondering what I did to embarrass myself, or remembering things I did to embarrass myself. I don't have to fight with my husband about things. I am honestly, the number one thing, I am fully conscious and aware in every moment. I don't miss a thing. I get to fully enjoy and be present for every single thing that happens. And there's nothing that like my mind is clouded on. And that to me, like being fully present in your life is the most amazing, freeing feeling to me. So I'll never go back. And I encourage anyone who drinks, you can ask anybody. My husband and I, because my husband doesn't drink anymore either. So I quit drinking that November, and Christmas Eve of that year was the last time that he drinks. So it'll be 10 years for him, like Christmas Day of this year. Neither of us have drank for that long. We are super goofy. We're total dorks. We have so much fun, and not dorks like because we don't drink. We're just like fun dorky. And like when we camp, we are some of the last people at the campfire every night. When we go to like family parties or different things, we're some of the first people there and the last ones to leave. Like it has not affected. And I know people thought at first like, oh, now they're going to be like judgy and whatever. And we're not. And so it took a while for people to realize that. Would I rather people didn't? Absolutely. Just because I know it's just so much better. But people have to get to that place on their own. And I fully understand that too, because people tried to, tell me things beforehand, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But so I fully understand that. But those are some of the reasons why I'm the way I am, why I'm not big on like super sexual things in books, or I don't know, there's just things like that I don't find the need for, and I think are unnecessary, and that's just me, and that's fine. Like everyone can think their own thing or have their own, there's different things that people are comfortable or uncomfortable with, but this kind of tells you why I have some of those thoughts about different things. But I love Jesus with all my heart, and I will never deny him. I would never be embarrassed to say it or tell anyone, because I want everyone to know him and love him, because when you do, bad things are still going to happen in your life. Hurtful things. People are going to be mean to you. People have been so mean to me since I've become a Christian. Like, some people, that is a major thing that they like to attack. That's okay. It's okay. I don't need their affirmation. I don't, and I kind of understand, because I used to be where they are as far as like how my attitude about it was, or like what I thought I knew. And, so I don't fault people for that at all. I want so much for people to know the absolute joy that I have in my life. I used to be a very negative person. I saw the negative in everything, and you can ask people about that too. And that is not me anymore. I am like completely the opposite. I'm the one being like, no, like I love rain. Rainy weather is my favorite weather. That drives people nuts. I love snow. Like I am a total dork about snow. Some people, that drives them nuts. Like people are super annoyed by how happy I am sometimes. And that's okay. But it's just, I wanted to share with you guys about my story. Like, I'm not ashamed of who I used to be, because it's like a different person. I look back at that girl and I feel for her, and I wish I could tell her, things that could have saved her so much hurt, and but I can't. But I also now have this story that I can share with people who might be in the same situation that I was in before, and can see that there is hope, that there are better things, there for you. And if you feel like you have a void in your life that you cannot fill, and you can't figure out what it is that you're missing, I can tell you exactly what it is. It's Jesus. And I am totally here for you. If you want to email me, my email is always down in the description box, to talk to me about things. Like I love it. There's nothing I love more than to share with other people about him, and just what he's done in my life. And so I know this has been long. I know I'm been a little wah-wah-ish, but that's also part of who I am. And I want so much for people to know him like I do. And I always am trying to know him more. And so, I hope that if you made it this far, it just kind of gives you a little bit of a picture of who I am, where I've come from, that kind of thing. And if you think I seem like this prudish, not perfect, but you know what I mean, like prudish, like, oh, whatever kind of person, I'm not, and I definitely didn't used to be, but things are just different now. And I see things differently, and I don't know. I'm different. I am a different person, and I love it, and I will never go back. And so yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you have any questions or whatever, down in the comments below. If you have something mean to say, that's okay. I mean, sometimes people are mean, and usually that's because you're hurting in some way, and so I'm sorry for that, but I won't be hurt by it, I guess. And because I just want to love people and love you through whatever you're going through and help you. And so if there's some way that I can, and if I can be an encouragement to you in some way, or support, or someone to come alongside you and help you through something, I would be more than happy to do that. There's nothing I could want more. And so yeah, so I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing a little bit more about me, pretty in depth. And yeah, so just thank you guys so much for listening, and I appreciate you so much. I'll talk to you soon.